Senator Rice.
Thanks, Mr Acting Deputy President. I am continually astounded by the depth of the depravity and the inhumanity of this government in its treatment of the most vulnerable people seeking asylum and refugees, and the justification of this cruelty, such as we've just heard from Senator McDonald. It's a stain on our country. These are our fellow humans. They are simply seeking safety and a future for their families. It is shameful, and it has gone on for far too long. And of course, it's not just the government that should be ashamed. We've just heard Senator Gallagher being an apologist for ongoing, indefinite incarceration of asylum seekers on the offshore hellholes of Manus Island and Nauru. The Labor Party must also recognise their key role in this. The Labor Party, along with the government, is equally responsible for the cruelty and inhumanity of those offshore camps. In the face of this cruelty and bigotry, there are, however, some windows of hope. In my home state of Victoria, people are undertaking determined, hopeful actions in the face of this regime to drive change and signal Australia's true values, values of care and compassion. Both major parties should take heed. Victorians are exercising their voices, and they'll continue to do so at the ballot box. One local council, the City of Darebin, which lies within the federal seat of Batman, has fearlessly demonstrated its support for refugees and asylum seekers. In December last year, Council resolved to write to the Prime Minister to express concern regarding the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Australia's offshore detention camps. Mayor Kim Lassurf stated that all levels of government must meet their humanitarian obligations to support asylum seekers and refugees, and called on the federal government to close the offshore detention camps on Manus Island and Nauru and immediately bring the refugees and asylum seekers to Australia for resettlement. I also note that Darebin is a refugee welcome zone where refugees successfully settle and receive support in the community, and that Darebin Council is a signatory to the joint statement by Victorian local governments on asylum seekers. And there are many other Victorian councils and community groups who are providing leadership, humanity and a vision for a welcoming Australia, who are reflecting the values of their community, the wishes of ordinary Australians, that refugees and asylum seekers should be treated with compassion. I commend them all. It makes me proud to be a Victorian. Both major parties should heed these community voices. I know a lot of good former Labor supporters who cannot abide the current parliamentary party's continued support for the fear-based, cruel regime we have in place. And so I say to my Labor colleagues in this place, there is always room to recognise these humanitarian options. But until you do, Australians will struggle to believe that you are ever true to your purported values of fairness and equality. And in a few short weeks, the residents of the Batman electorate will get the chance to send a strong message to the Labor Party that they want action, no more talk, no more lip service, no more pussyfooting around on refugees. Because Labor talks tall on refugees and asylum seekers, but in the end always falls in lockstep of the cruel policies of this government in the race to the bottom. The likely Labor candidate for Batman, Jed Kearney, she tells us she's progressive. She tells us she will represent the people of Batman. She tells us she's a lifelong supporter of refugees and asylum seekers. And indeed, I commend her work and her previous advocacy. But since she's become the likely Labor candidate, she's already fallen into line with party policy. She now says that Labor's position on boat turnbacks and offshore detention has been adopted at the party's national conference, and as a candidate and hopefully member of the Labor caucus, that's a reality I accept. That's a reality I accept. Well, that's not good enough. A lifelong advocate for refugees, she says. That's the reality I accept. A reality of cruelty, of inhumanity, of indefinite detention in these offshore hellholes. Well, the people of Batman, that's not a reality that they accept. And Alex Patel, the Greens candidate for Batman, that's not a reality she accepts. Because when you are given the honour to be an MP or a senator, what matters is how you vote. Not your supposed lifelong advocacy for refugees and asylum seekers, not how much you say you're going to change the party from within, not what realities you accept. What matters is how you vote. And the people of Batman deserve someone who believes that how they vote matters. Alex Patel is a lifelong advocate for refugees and asylum seekers. She will vote as the member for Batman to end the cruelty of offshore hellholes. We'll vote to end boat turnbacks. We'll vote to end indefinite incarceration. Because Alex Patel knows that what matters to the people of Batman is how she votes in the Parliament as their representative. I have hope for the day when this cruel, inhumane, secretive and frankly globally shameful treatment of refugees and asylum seekers will end. We must never stop highlighting its horrific impact on people. Australian community members won't be silent, and the Greens won't be silent, because the current cruel and inhumane asylum seeker and refugee policies are not a reality that the Greens accept.
Thank you, Senator Rice.